Okay, so let's talk about Killers of the Flower Moon, its ending, and all of that, because I think that it has one of the best endings we've seen in a long time. So, this is a film from Martin Scorsese starring Lily Gladstone, Robert De Niro, and Leonardo DiCaprio. It is based on the book of the same name by David Gran, which came out in 2017. So, we're here to talk about the film itself, the ending. So, of course, spoilers ahead if you haven't watched the film. I think by the title, you know there's spoilers, but there's going to be that one comment. But let's get right into it. So I think one of the main things we have to start talking about with this is that this is a true story that needs to be discussed more. This is basically a story of the Osage people finding the oil in their land, and then eventually not even being able to make much of it because they had these guardians, these white guardians that were going to handle their money. And we see it throughout the film that they aren't able to freely enjoy their money as much as they should be able to because this is their land and their oil. And so we see that even the character of Lily Gladstone, Molly, is having to always come up with like a defense of why she needs more money and all of this, and a reason, and sometimes not even getting that money due to the guardian not seemingly saying it's okay. And so that's one of the main things here that you have to know going into the film is that they are very rich, but they can't really take that money for themselves as freely as they want. It's in these hands of these guardians. And one of the things that's very crucial about this to note is that if you're married to an Osage or you can find a technical loop, you can eventually get their money by taking their head rights, basically is what they're calling it. So a lot of these people were very much so evil and conniving, trying to take their money in whatever way possible they can. And we saw it in the film through murder, through deceit, and all of this. They were just taking these people's money. And it's also very timely with at that time with the Tulsa massacre, where we saw a very wealthy, prominent African American like little town be completely destroyed due to the whole thing with greed and just racism and just very much so having this envy. And that's a whole other video for sure. But let's talk about the film in itself. One of the main things I think this film really touches upon and is very crucial, and something Martin Scorsese also talked about in a press conference I was able to listen in on, was compartmentalization is a huge thing in this film. And I heard that press conference like the day before I went to go watch the film. Actually, that morning I watched the press conference. Then later at night I went into the film. And going in with that mental note about what Martin Scorsese said about these characters, that is definitely a big thing here, because a lot of these characters are doing these dastardly evil, conniving, horrific like things, and they themselves are justifying it by saying, well, I don't necessarily think that about this person, but if I'm having to do it because of this other person, then I'm not the one in the wrong here, because I'm doing it because they're making me do it and I care about them as well. Even though, like, let's say, for example, I'm going to give these medications to Molly that might be spiked with something else, but at the same time, this is a medication she needs, and I trust my uncle because my uncle's saying that we need to take care of her and this is fine, so I'm not going to really question that. That's something that Ernest does in the film at a point, is give these medications that obviously are spiked with something. But the whole thing about him is he is like saying, well, my uncle wouldn't want bad for me, and because he knows I don't want bad for Molly, but at the same time, he knows that his uncle is still up to something. And that's the same thing with Robert De Niro, who plays King in this. He very much so says, why would they get mad at me for trying to get all of this money from them when, look, I'm building them schools, I'm building them roads, I'm doing all of this for them. So I'm not the bad guy here. I'm actually doing a greater good, and maybe I deserve to have a little money back to me because of that. So they, like, all of these characters sort of make all these little boxes in order to justify each little thing they do, because they know deep down it's wrong, but they justify it with something else. And so they do this compartmentalization in their heads throughout the whole film. And it is something to see, like, if you rewatch and all of that, you can just see a bit of hesitation with each event, but then they sort of try to justify and turn around with something else. I thought that was such a crucial thing about the film, which I very much enjoy, and I really want to see that on my second watch of the film again. And I think one of the main things about this film as well that a lot of people are talking about, and is something that is justified justified, is that the Osage people are definitely pushed to the side in the film, and I definitely agree with that. I think that the film really focuses more on Ernest and King than it should, and should have more of a magnifying glass on the Osage people and everything they were feeling at the time as well. But also, I do see where Scorsese can't tell that story. If that was the story that was going to be told, Scorsese could not be the one to make this film. It would have to be somebody who is from the Osage, and Scorsese can only do so much. And I think if he tried to put his hands on that story and try to do that story, it would have come out wrong, and definitely would have been something, I think, just in bad taste for him to do as an Italian American. And I think that there is definitely something that he's doing here, which is more important, is raising the issue and the flag about what this film is about and opening that conversation up, and that it's even into the final moments of the film, which we'll talk in a bit. But I think that having a name like DiCaprio, De Niro, and Scorsese makes this film be like, hey, I gotta go watch that film for a lot of people, because they see these three as being some of the big titans in film. And at the end of the day, Scorsese is telling this story that is making America have this mirror up to them about the things that have happened on America's watch and by America themselves. And I think that that is more important for Scorsese to do with his, you could say, privilege of being this high-tier filmmaker that is regarded as a legend and very respected amongst the industry and just the world in general. So I think that you definitely get Scorsese just doing what he can in order to leave that conversation open. And I feel like that's something that is more important right now, because I really do feel like if anybody else tried to make this movie, especially somebody from the Osage or anything like that, it wouldn't have been getting this push it's been getting. Apple wouldn't have shelled out all of this money for it to be made. We wouldn't be seeing it be announced everywhere on billboards, on the radio, on the TV, and all of that. And so you sort of open this conversation of this necessary pitfall that has to be taken at one point, but in order for us to be able to continue on to the road and continue to tell these stories, which is what I think Scorsese's doing here, playing that long game for sure. And so that makes me think about the ending, which showed us the Lucky Strike Hour, which it was an actual radio show that was occurring at the time, and they actually did the Osage murders on that and talked about it, and that was with J. Edgar Hoover, who was pretty much the beginning of the FBI, said thinking this would be good PR and all of that. And so they told these stories. And I think that what makes it very hard-hitting of an ending is that that's exactly what's going on and been going on in history, is the people who were affected the most and all of that don't have a say in their story. It's being told by these same people who very much so profited off of them and all of that at the time. And it's more like the natives didn't really get a chance to tell their story at all, and it was told by a white person, and at the same time the book was told by a white person, and then you have the film be told by a white person. And so I think Scorsese's making a point here about how this is sort of been dramatized and made into entertainment for us to consume, and we're there in the theater watching it yet again be consumed by us. And we were just there watching as all of these events unfolded, and they were very tragic, horrific events that did happen, and yet they are made into this whole spectacle for consumers, which is kind of weird when you think about it. You could kind of say also how true crime is now monetized and all of that, and you have these people who have their families and all of that be ripped apart, be destroyed by all of this crime, and yet we as a consumer want to know everything about it, and the person making the content is profiting off of the hurt and of death as well, you could say. And I think it's a very strong message Scorsese's sending at the end, how even he himself is a part of this as well. And I think that this movie really drives home that, and I think that I hope that this brings more awareness to this horrific tragedy that happened, especially to Molly's name as somebody who was such a big victim of it all and at the center of it as well. And hopefully this does open the conversation for better representation, these stories being told by the people who are the ones who very much so felt the events, the ramifications of everything that happened in the future. And we'll see what happens. But that's my thoughts, my opinions on Killers of the Flower Moon, its ending. But yeah, let me know what you think about the film in itself, about the ending and its themes and all of that. We definitely want to talk more about this. I do want to read the book before I get more into the themes and all of that. So I'll definitely try to do that before the end of the year. We'll talk more about it for sure. And I definitely do have to catch it one more time just to get everything out of it. But let me know your thoughts and opinions. And if you enjoyed the film or not, we could definitely have a bigger discussion of this as well in another video. So stay tuned for that, maybe a live or something like that. If that's something you want, let me know. But as always, that's going to do it for me. Make sure you're following us on our socials, on our Instagram, our TikTok, our Twitter, all of that provided over here at the end. And I'll see all of you next time. Stay safe, stay positive.